Imagine you are standing in an ancient hall. The torchlight flickers. The walls are covered in inscriptions long worn by time. No one can read them anymore. Yet they impose upon the space a deadly authority. This is not a place to ask permission. This is a place to force others to kneel. And today, we will pull aside the centuries-old veil of dust to tell a story even the gods themselves wanted buried. A war not just for land, but for memory. Not merely to seize power, but to seize the right to define what justice is. A rebellion born of pride, of youth's eternal hunger, the desire to tear down stale old laws, to rewrite the tale in one's own voice. But in return, the price was blood. The price was the silence of the defeated, the everlasting regret of the one who gave birth to the rebel. And at the center of this tragedy, there is a son and a father. Marduk, the son of Enki. Enki, the god who created humanity, who gave them the fire of intellect and freedom. And now, forced to watch his own son use that fire to burn everything, to reduce to ashes what he once struggled to keep in balance. In this moment, I am not speaking as a historian. I speak as one who digs through the graveyard of old oaths. I do not ask who was right or wrong. I only ask, who still dares to remember? And if you are listening, ask yourself, when power changes hands, what is the first thing it kills? Truth, memory, or the belief that we can be different? If you wish to accompany this journey, if you want to keep hearing the stories history tried to bury, I invite you to subscribe to the channel right now. This is not a storytelling channel meant to lull you to sleep. This is a place to make you uneasy, to force you to ask questions no one wants you to ask. And if you are ready to ask those questions, leave the number 8 in the comments below. So I know you are one of the few unafraid to stare straight into the ashes of myth and ask why they still smolder. Because this is not just a story about ancient gods. This is a story about us, about the kind of power we celebrate, about the kind of justice we accept without daring to question, about how we kill memory to buy ourselves a false peace. Remember, no law is immutable, no memory is ever truly dead, so long as someone dares to tell it. And today, I invite you to listen, not just with your ears, but with your conscience. Not every throne is given. Some thrones are taken by force, and we, the living, must decide whether we bow our heads or stand up to tell the truth. When we speak of the Sumerian and Babylonian gods, don't imagine gentle stone statues resting quietly on altars. They were ancient beings worshipped because they taught humans law. But those laws were always written in blood and tears. They represented natural forces, personified, mythologized, but also politicized, molded into tools for the powerful. The Anunnaki Council was the center of cosmic power, a council that humans only dared to beg, never dared to understand. Enlil, the ruler, god of wind and law, ruthless in his cold fairness. He was law, not out of love, but out of fear. He was order, allowing no change, accepting no negotiation. Enlil saw humanity as a tool, a group of servants meant to serve the gods, to build temples and offer tribute to feed their immortal ambition. Opposite him stood Enki, his older brother, wise but dangerous. Enki did not believe in blind submission. He believed in wisdom, in water that changes shape, in the ability to transcend limits. It was Enki who secretly created humanity, not to serve, but to learn, to evolve. He was the sower of freedom, but the seed of freedom always carries the curse of chaos. Enki knew laws were necessary to resist chaos, but he also knew laws had to be flexible so they wouldn't break. Enlil did not. Enlil wanted law as immutable as stone, even if that stone crushed the hopes of the weak. And from that conflict, a quiet crack opened. The Anunnaki Council, though powerful, was never truly united. The balance between Enlil and Enki was like a thin rope stretched over an abyss. And upon it, a new generation waited, ready to tear it apart. In that context, Babylon arose, a city that did not ask the past for permission, that did not bow before tradition. Babylon emerged in a harsh land, where people understood the value of concentrated power. There, people did not want myths sharing power among divine lineages. They wanted one single king, one supreme god, a symbol of absolute order. And they found Marduk. Marduk was not just Enki's son. He was his father's dream and nightmare. As intelligent as Enki, but without mercy. As ambitious as Enlil, but unbound by the past. Marduk looked at the aging Anunnaki Council and saw a disease of division and hesitation. He wanted to cure it with fire. The council refused him. Enlil refused to recognize his power. Enlil's heirs, Ninurta, Nanna, saw him as an impostor. But Marduk did not need recognition. He needed results. He gathered Babylon into a fortress of power. He did not persuade, he imposed. He did not ask, he took. And there, within sun-scorched brick walls, a new story was written, not just to be told, but to rule. The Enuma Elish. The Enuma Elish is not merely mythology. It is a declaration of war. In it, Tiamat, the primordial mother of chaos, is turned into an enemy beyond mercy. She is not merely the source of life. She is a threat, a monster, the justification for genocide. Because if you want to dominate, you must teach others to fear. If you want to legitimize violence, you must turn the victim into a demon. Marduk rises in this epic as a savior. But a savior for whom? For his own power. He set terms for the other gods. If I defeat Tiamat, I will be king forever. They agreed, not because they believed he deserved it, but because they feared chaos more than they feared him. And so the battle began, not only in myth, but in the human mind itself. In the darkness of an unformed cosmos, Marduk and Tiamat faced off. Her image, a vast dragon, her belly filled with countless monsters. Marduk used spells, magical weapons, thunder and wind nets. In the end, he tore her body in two. Half became the sky, half became the earth. Her blood became rivers, her eyes springs, her bones mountains. Creation born from destruction, order born from crime. And from the corpse of the mother, he built his throne. When the Anunnaki Council saw the result, they had no choice. They knelt. They gave him the ME, the tablets of cosmic law, the secrets of design, the sacred rules once shared among the gods. Marduk was no longer the challenger. He became king, not just king of Babylon, king of the universe, at least on parchment, in the mouths of priests, in the temple. He rewrote rituals, rewrote language, rewrote memory, because the victor does not just behead the enemy. He rewrites history so no one remembers them. Babylon became a religious center. The peak of the ziggurat stabbed at the sky like a provocation to the other gods. In the Isagila temple, the Enuma Elish was recited aloud every year as a ritual to reinforce power. The people bowed not only before the god statue, but before the story that programmed them to believe this was inevitable. No place for Tiamat, no place for questions. And Enki, the father of Marduk, stood there, silent. He had created humanity so they could understand, create, be free. He had taught the secrets of the ME so his son would know how to design reality. But Enki did not teach Marduk mercy, did not teach him that laws exist to protect the weak, not just to strengthen the powerful. Enki looked at his son and understood the tragedy of a creator. No one can truly control what they have created. As he watched the Babylonian temple rise like a scar upon the earth, Enki understood that every formula of order carries within it the seed of violence. Because when law becomes absolute, it no longer protects, it becomes chains. When power concentrates, it no longer guides, it suffocates. And when a story has only one voice, memory becomes a tool of rule. So what about us? We live in empires with no ziggurat towers, but we still build structures of power. We no longer read the Enuma Elish, but we repeat stories written by the victors. We study history edited to serve whom? We call law justice, but justice for whom? We celebrate peace, but what peace is not built on ashes? So when I tell you about Marduk, about the Anunnaki Council, about Enki, don't think I'm only speaking of an ancient age. I'm talking about us, about the cycle of power and memory, about how one generation overthrows the old, only to repeat the same crimes under a new name, and about the fragile hope that someone still dares to remember, dares to tell the story, dares to ask why. Because if we don't tell the true stories, who will? And if we don't ask, will anyone still dare to answer? Don't look at the Enuma Elish as merely an ancient Babylonian poem. See it as the most dangerous weapon humanity ever invented. A story told well. In the desert's darkness, the fire of Babylon's temple flickered, illuminating stone reliefs where priests chanted sacred words that hypnotized the people. They told, when the sky had no name, when the earth was not yet formed, when everything was chaos, Tiamat ruled, holding the power of primal waters and fertility. The listeners held their breath. Within Tiamat lay the briny sea of fear. Within Tiamat was the image of the primordial mother, vast, uncontrollable. Tiamat was chaos, but also the mother of all things. Yet to rewrite the world, Marduk turned Tiamat into a monster. She is the traitor, the enemy of order, who birthed monsters to destroy peace. Listeners shuddered. In the firelight, Tiamat transformed into a massive dragon, devouring any who dared see the truth that order always kills the possibility of change. And to justify one single king, you need one single enemy. Perfect to hate, to kill, to tear apart. In that epic, Marduk stands forth as the savior. the young one promising, "If I defeat Tiamat, you will make me king forever." No negotiation, no sharing, standing alone above all. And the old gods, weary from conflict, agreed. Not because they believed Marduk deserved it, but because they feared Tiamat more than him. Old power wasn't persuaded. It was forced to choose between two horrors. Does this sound familiar? When the strong puts a knife to your throat and says, "Choose me or chaos." So Marduk armed himself with the weapons of wind, storm, thunder, magical nets, incantations, mirrored shields. His image entering battle wasn't merely a physical fight. It was an invasion of the imagination. The listeners of the epic didn't just hear, they were reprogrammed. They began to believe power must be absolute to hold back chaos. That one who kills his own mother to create order is the true savior. In the darkness of the story, Marduk confronts Tiamat. She screams, not just as a dragon, but as the cry of freedom being strangled. Marduk binds her with spells, wind nets tightening around her. She struggles, unleashing storms. But in the end, the blade of order slices through chaos's belly. Her final scream echoes like a curse. "You may kill me, but chaos will live within the very laws you create." Marduk did not stop there. He split Tiamat's body in two. Half became the sky, half became the earth. He used her blood to make rivers, her eyes to form springs, her bones to raise mountains. A universe built upon a corpse, a throne erected upon the remains of Mother herself. And the Anunnaki Council watched. Not applauding, only bowing their heads. They understood. From now on, there would be no balanced council. Only a king. And that king did not need their agreement, only their fear. They gave Marduk the ME, the tablets of cosmic laws, the formulas for designing reality. Enki once guarded the ME as the secret of creation, something to be shared with care, guided by wisdom. Marduk held the ME as a weapon, not to share, but to impose. No more teaching, only commands. No more flexibility like water, only hardness like stone. And so, Babylon blossomed like a blood-red flower. The new city became the center of religion and politics. Temples built high, ziggurat towers rising as if to pierce the sky. No more sharing power with Enlil's Nippur or Enki's Eridu. Babylon monopolized. Babylon taught the Enuma Elish as scripture. Babylon forced its people to repeat oaths of loyalty to Marduk. The new laws were not just written on clay. They were carved into human minds. The enemy wasn't only killed, they were forgotten. No one wept for Tiamat anymore. No one dared mention the council. There remained only one king, one god, one story. But stop. Ask, who weeps for Enki? Who sees the tragedy of a creator watching his child become a tyrant? Enki once stood between opposing poles, maintaining a fragile balance between order and chaos. He believed in freedom, in knowledge. But freedom without compassion becomes mad ambition. Knowledge without ethics is just a weapon. Enki taught Marduk everything except mercy. And the price was watching his son burn down everything he once tried to preserve. The image of Enki in the end is a sorrowful face. He does not cry. Tears are not enough to extinguish Babylon's fire. He only watches and understands that every law, every system, every formula for order contains the seed of chaos. Because when one person believes they have the right to decide everything, they have already become a new Tiamat, waiting for others to rise up and slay them. The cycle doesn't end. It only changes its name. So what about us? Do we really think we are different? We no longer read the Enuma Elish, but we repeat the same crimes. We make laws to protect whom? We write history to praise whom? We tell stories to teach our children to obey whom? How many times in history has the strong invented a mythical Tiamat to justify real massacres? Look around. The Tower of Babel lies in ruins, but the ambition to build it lives on. The modern ME, laws, technology, money are still tools. Tools for whom? Who holds them? Who designs them? And who gets turned into monsters so others can more easily hate, destroy, and forget them? Enki is no longer here to whisper warnings to us. But the story remains. In the darkness, in the ashes, in the whispered words of memories not yet dead. And the responsibility to tell it does not belong to the gods. It belongs to us. Those who know how to listen, how to doubt, how to tell it again. Because as long as one person dares to tell the truth, the cycle trembles. And if enough people tell it, it can break. After the Anunnaki Council knelt before Marduk, a new era was proclaimed to begin. But don't be fooled by the splendor of white stone temples, the proud ziggurat towers piercing the blue sky. These are not merely buildings. They are a declaration. We no longer share power. Babylon became the absolute center. Enlil's Nippur was overshadowed. Enki's Eridu was forgotten. In Babylon, priests recited the Enuma Elish every year, not as a poem, but as a blood oath. We killed Tiamat. We will kill anyone who stands in our way. The new empire didn't just need swords and spears. It needed memory to be managed, stories to be edited, fear to be planted in children's hearts, because the strongest is not the one with the biggest army, but the one who controls belief. In Babylon, everything became a tool to consolidate power. Laws were written to serve those above. Language was standardized so that anyone deviating from it was branded a rebel. Rituals were designed to turn submission into instinct. And in the firelight of the temple, people slowly forgot other stories, whispers of a council that shared power, of debates, of an order where even Enlil had to listen to Enki. All of it burned away, in consciousness and in the soul. But Marduk's legacy didn't just lie in the temple. It lay in the idea that to survive, order must be absolute, that to avoid chaos, we need one single strong figure to decide for all. That idea didn't die with Babylon. It lived through every empire after. It wore Roman robes. It donned European crowns. It held modern constitutions and called itself the voice of the people. But the principle remained the same. One person, one group, claiming the right to impose on all. And there was always a new Tiamat invented to justify violence. When a story is told enough times, for long enough, people believe it is truth. They forget that another story could be told. And in the dark corner of the Babylonian epic, There is always a silent figure, Enki, father of Marduk, the creator, the one who gave me to humanity so they could learn, not merely obey. Enki did not fight his son. He didn't gather armies, didn't proclaim curses. He simply watched. Tears could save no one, but he understood. And that understanding was the heaviest curse of all. He saw that the Emi, the tablets of sacred laws, were neither good nor evil. They were just tools. Whoever held them would decide whether they became medicine or poison. Enki had hoped his son would use them to balance chaos and order. But Marduk only wanted to impose order, leaving no room for chaos, leaving no room for life. And there, Enki understood the tragedy of all creation. When I give knowledge without teaching compassion, I hand a weapon to one who seeks to dominate. Babylon shone brightly, but beneath the polished baked bricks lay countless corpses of stories strangled to death. Local traditions erased, languages modified, old gods demoted to demons, and the silence of the survivors, not because they agreed, but because they were too tired to resist. I don't tell you this story, so you will scorn ancient Babylon. I tell it so you will understand Babylon never truly died. We rebuild it every time we believe there is only one way to see, one system, one single truth. We erect it every time we fear freedom so much that we are willing to throw someone into the fire for being different. We maintain it every time we sit quietly, letting the powerful rewrite the story and teach our children to repeat it without question. Ask yourself, who is Marduk in this age? Who is the Tiamat smeared as a monster to justify war? Who holds the modern ME, laws, technology, language, to design reality to their advantage? And who is Enki, watching it all collapse, knowing the mistake, yet saying nothing? We cannot go back to the past to fix it. Enki cannot save his son. The Anunnaki Council no longer exists to restore balance. But we can still tell the story. And as long as someone tells it, there is hope for change. The story does not end with Marduk's victory. It only ends if no one dares to remember. So I ask you, you who have listened this far, how will you tell this story? Will you repeat it as justification for power? Or will you tell it as a warning? Will you bow before the most powerful storyteller? Or will you fight to reclaim the words, to reclaim memory? Let others build their Babylon, but don't let them burn away your memory. Don't let them erase the questions our ancestors once asked. Don't let them turn you into someone silent, because silence is complicity, and storytelling is resistance. Choose your role before someone else chooses it for you. So after all this, what do we have left? No more Anunnaki Council to arbitrate. No intact Emi tablets to answer the question, what is justice? Only us, and the tattered memories we dare to stitch back together, piece by piece. In history's long night, the victors always built temples and wrote epics. They carved their names into stone, believing engraved words do not die. They devised rituals so each generation would repeat oaths of loyalty. They taught children a story carefully edited, no blood, no tears, only the conqueror's glory. Babylon did this with the Enuma Elish. But Babylon was not an exception. Everyone does this when they hold power. Every empire writes its own mythology and calls it truth. So ask, what was Enki's true crime? Was it that he taught humanity to understand the Emi, laws, the design of the universe? Was it that he wanted them to awaken? no longer bow in blind submission? Or was his crime forgetting that knowledge without ethics only creates bloodthirstier conquerors? Enki looked at his son, Marduk, not just as flesh and blood. Marduk was the final result of an idea. Knowledge is power. But power without responsibility will destroy everything. Enki created humanity, not to be slaves, but to learn. Yet he did not teach them limits, did not teach them that law exists to protect the weak, not to legitimize the strong. And in that way, Enki himself sowed the seed of tragedy. On the night Babylon lit torches to celebrate Marduk's throne, how many people wept in silence? How many stories were burned? How many languages went mute? How many memories became crimes simply because they told another truth? And who wrote the charges against the storytellers? Law. New me tablets, carved into bricks, carved into human minds. But law is not immutable. Bricks crack, temples fall. Victory songs turn to ash. Babylon did not escape that rule. It was conquered. Its tower fell. Its inscriptions smashed. Gods were dragged down from their altars, and new stories were told by new victors. History is not a straight line. It is a spiral. Enlil's time passed. Marduk's time passed. But the idea that we need one absolute ruler to avoid chaos still lives. It just changes its clothing, changes its language, changes its symbols, but keeps the same promise and the same threat. Submit to me or chaos will devour you. And Tiamat? Did she really die? Or did she just change shape, becoming the cry for freedom every empire fears? Because chaos is not a monster. Chaos is the possibility of change. It is the voice of those not invited to the bargaining table. It is the seed of a future not yet defined. And rulers always fear a future not yet defined. Enki, the one who created the Emmy, understood this. He did not destroy the Emmy. He did not smash the tablets of law. He simply accepted that they were tools. The one who holds them will decide their meaning. And that is the real tragedy. Because in the end, no God will save us from ourselves. No council will restore balance if we do not balance ourselves within. No law will be just if we do not dare look at injustice and name it. No story will be true if we do not dare hear the cries in its censored passages. So what do we do with these modern Emmy, our systems of law, education, media? Do we obey them like worshippers before Marduk's temple? Or do we open them up, read carefully, question? Do we fear chaos so much that we accept any order, even when it suffocates the soul? Or do we learn to stand within chaos without letting it consume us? Perhaps that is Enki's final reminder. The one not in the Babylonian epic, not permitted to be read in the Isagila temple. Understand, but show compassion. Keep laws, but don't let them bind the heart. Build order, but don't kill the possibility of change. Tell stories, but don't silence other voices. Because if we don't tell the story, someone else will tell it for us. And they will tell it in a way that keeps them forever on the throne. They will choose the Tiamat for us to hate. They will choose who gets to be God and who must become demon. They will turn the Emmy into gilded chains. We don't need another Marduk. We need those willing to look Tiamat in the eye and recognize she is not a monster, but the very part of chaos, freedom, creativity not yet understood. Look back at everything that has happened. A council once called sacred. Gods who once shared power to keep balance. Enlil, cold, harsh, but impossible to ignore. Enki, soft as water, but not harmless. They did not love each other, but they needed each other. Balance was not friendship. It was the recognition that no one can rule forever. And into that crack, Marduk appeared, bringing the promise of youth, a new world, eternal order. But what was the price of building that order? Cutting his own mother's body in half, dividing sky and earth with a blade, turning creation into a tool of domination. People often say chaos is bad, but no one asks why. Chaos is simply what we have not yet controlled. It is the voice of those not invited. It is the possibility of what has never existed. It is the right of difference to exist. Marduk promised to destroy chaos, to bring peace. But that kind of peace is only the silence of the subdued. It is the death of all debate. It is the end of change. It is the grave of the future. And when Babylon blazed under Marduk's rule, those who lived there no longer dreamed their own dreams. They dreamed dreams already written for them. They read the Enuma Elish not as a warning, but as a justification. They taught their children that only the strong can keep the peace. And so, the story repeated itself. But this story did not end in Babylon. It repeats everywhere people fear freedom more than tyranny. When we accept laws without asking who wrote them. When we praise peace without seeing whose blood was spilled. When we build new temples, governments, corporations, systems, and forget to ask who controls whom. When someone says, "Let me decide for you. I know what's best." Remember Babylon. When someone says, "Don't listen to them. They are chaos. They will ruin everything." Remember Tiamat. When someone says, "We bring order, law, security." Ask, for whom? And at what price? Enki is no longer here to remind us. He was not a perfect god. He made the greatest mistake. Believing knowledge alone was enough to redeem. But knowledge without compassion only creates more sophisticated weapons. The ME, the tablets of cosmic law, choose no side. They serve whoever holds them. They can create Eden or build Babylon. Enki understood that too late. When he stood among the ruins of old oaths, when he heard the Enuma Elish echo as a song of war, when he saw the ME in his son's hands turn into golden chains. We are just like Enki. We invented law, language, science, technology. We take pride in understanding how the world works. But have we taught each other how to love? We teach our children to read, write, count, code. But does anyone teach them to hear another's cry? We say freedom is precious, but we fear it enough to hand it over to anyone who promises order. And when everything collapses, as Babylon once collapsed, we start telling new stories, new promises, new language, new rulers. And the cycle continues, unless we dare to tell this story differently, not as the victor's myth, not as a justification for violence, but as a reminder that we don't have to repeat it. Speak the truth, that every law is written by humans, not carved on heavenly stone, that every system has limits and needs to be questioned, that chaos should not be exterminated, but heard, understood, transformed. That memory should not be edited to lull us, but to wake us up. If we can do that, then the ME, law, knowledge, will once again be tools to build, not destroy. If we can accept chaos in our own hearts, we will no longer need those who promise to destroy it with violence. If we tell this story enough and truthfully enough, there will be a generation that does not repeat the same mistakes. If you're still here, if you're still listening, then allow me to say one final thing. Not as a storyteller, but as a fellow accomplice in the history of our species. Because we, all of us, have bowed before some Marduk, have once believed in some Enuma Elish written to legitimize power, have stayed silent when the weak were turned into monsters so they could be easily slaughtered. We are not innocent, but neither are we hopeless. Because recognizing this truth is already the first step toward change. Remember, the story is never just the past, it is a map. It shows the way for the powerful and for the ones who retell it. Whoever holds the map guides the way. Whoever writes the story defines what justice is. Whoever stays silent, except sitting at the end of the table. Babylon did not fall because its bricks cracked. It fell because memory fractured, because people dared to tell other stories, dared to say that the supreme God was not immortal, dared to ask why they had to bow. Every empire will eventually crumble. What remains are the whispered stories in the night, the stories that keep alive the fragile flame of freedom. Enki, old, weary, knowing he had failed, still held on to one last hope, not to stop the cycle forever, but to plant the seed of doubt in human hearts. A small voice. Don't believe everything the victors tell. Listen for the cries forbidden to speak. Ask who the law really protects. That was his only legacy. Not the ME, the tablets of law that could be abused, but the capacity to question and the courage to ask. So I won't tell you what to believe. I have no ME to hand you. I only have this story, with its scars, its blood and tears, its interwoven truth and lies. I place it in your hands, not as a tool, but as an invitation.